suspicion, tell me there's more.
The views and opinions expressed on this show are those of the host, guests, and callers who are responsible for their content and do not reflect the opinions of In Touch Radio or its staff.
Good morning, and welcome to Reality Radio, In Touch Radio. This is yours truly, Pete Edwards. My partner is Clint Parrish. Will be calling in this morning, and we got a nice young man. I say he's young because he doesn't have a gray beard yet. Rashaun Gendrett, and he's going to be talking about why he's running for a school board seat in Hillsborough County, countywide. Brothers, we've had two opportunities to have those seats, but everybody can't get together on the same page. But we have a lot to talk about this week, and including this bipartisan infrastructure bill that was hung up, should have been passed 3 months ago. We're going to briefly hit on, and I will ask Mr. Gendrett about it because it played an important part in the gubernatorial race in Virginia. School moms, education issues, whether it was critical race theory and all that fake stuff. And also, we got a lot to discuss. And then while we're waiting on Clint to call in, introduce yourself, sir. And did I pronounce that name right? It's Rashaun Gendrett.
That actually was perfect, Rashaun Gendrett.
All right. Sounds a little French or Arabic in that name
somewhere. Creole, Louisiana.
Okay. All right. So you, all right. So you got your crayfish and everything else, and boudin and all that kind of stuff like that have been down there and thing. All right. Now you're a native now of Tampa.
That is correct. Florida is my home.
And you relocated from
Los Angeles, California.
And when you worked for the school district, independent Los Angeles School District, for 20 years.
I worked there for 20 years. I was a teacher. I taught elementary, middle school, high school. I taught first grade, second grade, third grade, middle school, high school. I was also a Title I coordinator, also dean of students, athletic director, homeless and foster youth liaison. So I've had a lot of roles.
You got a smorgasbord. Now, are you in the school system here anywhere?
I am not currently in the school system right now.
We want our audience to know this is straight up the middle. We play it straight up the middle where all our guests, we ask tough questions, we receive tough answers from everybody. So the thing of it is, it's interesting. We were talking off air to Mr. Gendrett, and I said, you just got here under 2 years, and you've thrown you want to, with your background, of course, you decided you're going to run for a countywide District 6 seat in Hillsborough County. We want to remind our listening audience to know that all of there's redistricting going on all over the country. Congressional redistricting, county commissioner redistricting, city council redistricting, wards redistricting, you name it. Legislative redistricting, it's that time of year they got the census report on. But what's interesting, you come and you've been here less than 2 years, and you decide to run for school board. Now, I'm going to be quite honest with you. Generally, African Americans that move to Florida, or anywhere in the country really, if you study the dynamics of it and the stats and all, very seldom they move to a part of the country in less than 2 years and decide to run for an office. So obviously you come to Tampa, and something you saw that says, hey, you know what, with the experience I got, and I want the listening audience to understand that unified school districts, you have them in California. Like if you go to Indiana, in Indianapolis, they have an independent school district versus another county school district. So they got them all kind of ways in them. But you come here in less than 2 years and you say, no, something wrong. Now, is it because you're part of the movement with this critical race theory thing, or the woke issues, or the more going to charter schools, or more freedom of choice? Let's be frank. 2 years less here. What made you decide to run?
Well, it's interesting because when I moved here, actually I have family. My mother's family is from Alabama.
All right, we're going to take this call.
All
Let's
right.
hold this call. Caller, come in this morning. We got Mr. Gendrett on, and I believe this is Attorney Clint Parrish, sir.
Good
Good morning, gentlemen. Yes, it is. Pete, how's it going?
All right, we're just starting with my man who's just moved here less than 2 years ago. But I know you got Clint. You got some topics on your mind, real quick,
Absolutely.
and let's.
Yeah. First of all, then I'm just elated with what St. Petersburg was able to pull off. So, congratulations on the recent election of the new mayor. I hope that the community at large is taking notice of that, and maybe use that blueprint for other communities. I love to hear what your guest thinks about the idea that other communities can learn how to elect more African Americans and a more diverse electorate. By looking at the way that St. Petersburg was able to pull that off.
Well, I tell you what, that's Mr. Gendrett, his opinion, but mine was that was what you call an abnormality. And I tell you, do you really think that's going to can be duplicated in Tampa or Clearwater or Sarasota County or Pasco? That was a rare combination of people really working together in my mind. Because obviously Ken Welch, who had been on the county commission about 20 years, he had a coalition. He had conservatives, he had liberals, he had some progressives, he had the black community to a large extent. Some in the primary did not, that were from the black neighborhood, didn't vote for him because people have a right to vote for who they feel is going to be in the best interest. But Mr. Gendrett, I telling Clint now that couldn't happen in Tampa and a whole bit unless somebody like you from out of the city decided to run for something. But if you have a brief opinion on that St. Pete's mayor race.
Yeah, I didn't follow it super close. Obviously, I'm running my own race here at Hillsborough, but it was a very interesting race. I think you mentioned, Ken had a lot of experience and he's been in that community for a long time. So, but I think you're seeing a lot of diversity now on school boards and congressional and different, especially even African American. It's interesting. I was told by some people not to even run for countywide because of the color of my skin, and I rejected that. And I've had many people of different politics and different race tell me that I would be a great candidate. So,
well, when we talk about now Mayor-elect Ken Welch, Clint, I've always considered him if you go by the old definitions, he could actually be a moderate Republican. Okay. I'm serious.
Everybody that wins, Pete. You want to make them a moderate Republican?
No, but here's why I say that: the black vote in St. Pete was significant. No doubt about that. But he couldn't. You got a lot of areas in St. Pete, South Shore, a lot of areas that are conservative Republican areas or independent areas. He could not have won the mayor's race on the black vote alone. He definitely could not have done that.
Agreed.
Okay?
Absolutely.
All right. So you have to have a skill set. When they interview you, they say you got your KSAs, so you got to have knowledge, skills, and ability to work that and make sausage or whatever. And he's done that over the years. And so some of the progressives who did not want him to win, they wanted Darden Rice or somebody else. They came along, and Mr. Blackman, who was his opponent in the runoff, obviously he set himself up for something later. So I'm happy for Ken Welch. I don't see it. In fact, I'll go right out now. Probably won't be around, but I can tell you it will be another 16 years before Tampa will be in a position to elect a black mayor. Primarily because the fractions within the black community. We are not a together black community because of income primarily. A lot of sophisticated, well-to-do African Americans in the city and the county, they really don't want anything to do with regular blue-collar African Americans or low-income African Americans until they really need to vote. Otherwise, you don't see them. That's my opinion. I'm standing by it. The proof is in the pudding. and see, when Mr. Gendrett, when he talks about running countywide, remember we've had an opportunity to have a black male school board member, Stanley Gray. But even though it was a nonpartisan race, once they found out Stan was a Republican, then the black women decided, no, we can't vote for him. So they didn't try to get out and get voters and stuff. So we, what's the next issue before we go to break?
Right. Let me and your guest jump in a little bit. Now, I would like to know if your guest thinks there's any correlation between the St. Pete election and the Virginia election, because they seem to have gone in different directions. And the guest question becomes, how deep down in the local politics does our national politics reach? And likewise, over to the school board where he has an interest.
Okay, sir, you're on.
Yeah, I think that I don't really see a correlation with the St. Pete race in terms of the over here in Hillsborough. In this sense, I think in the St. Pete race with Ken, I don't think CRT was a big issue, but obviously in Virginia, that was a huge issue in Virginia, and I think even here in Hillsborough, in terms of CRT, may play a role in this upcoming race. As I've said before, I'm against CRT being taught in the schools. And we were talking before with Pete before we came on air. I just think it's divisive. It's aimed to divide us and to keep us against one another, where we need to come and we need to be united. But I think it's just another tool to keep us divided, to keep us hating one another, and to put us on different sides. And the thing is, and the issue, especially here in Hillsborough, is with all of our issues in our schools in Hillsborough, I don't know if you're familiar with this, Pete and Clint, Hillsborough County Schools have the most failing schools in the state of Florida.
I've been around school issues since 1972.
So why are we focusing on CRT and putting resources and money there where we have a lot of failing minority schools where our focus needs to be? So that's kind of my take on it.
Clint, let me ask him something. I ask tough questions there. From one brother to another conservative brother. You talk about you're against CRT. To me, when I see white people talk about that, that means they don't want to teach their kids and grandkids that white people, mean white people, blew up a Birmingham church and killed girls going to school. So you telling me, going to Sunday school, so you telling me that we shouldn't tell the story of how mean white people went in and blew up a Birmingham church and killed 4 young girls? All they were doing was going to Sunday school. You think it's right not to teach that?
No, and I think when I go to talk to different groups, Pete, I clarify what I mean by CRT, because a lot of people have a different definition of what CRT. CRT is talking about American history, slavery, racism. That's not CRT. This new stuff that they're trying to come out with, it's really with the political view, with the political edge to it. So I'm not opposed to teaching about those things. I think it's important we teach about those things, but not in a way that's designed to divide us.
Well, it has to be divisive in a way, because everybody seems to overlook the fact that they were still lynching us and all like that. So you can't, history, as painful as it is, for you to sit here and say that you can teach it but then avoid the painful aspects of history. And when we come back from the break, Clint, we're going to clarify that.
Yes.
Get a brother
we need to clarify that.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, I'm conservative, but I ain't going for that. We'll be right back with Straight Up the Middle.
Wait a minute, Pete. There are some questions in the public domain about your conservatism, and I'm going to let that slide for right now.
All right. We're In Touch Radio, Reality News. We're here with Rashaun Gendrett, who just moved to Hillsborough County in less than 2 years, want to run for school board. So don't forget to call in 444-9588, 444-9588, and I think it's going to get hot in here. So let's go to break, and we'll be right back.
Hey, this is Agent Wright, better known as Mr. Clean. You looking for some great barbecue? Come see them two brothers in the grill, located at 423 Virginia Street, Charleston, West Virginia. We got ribs, chicken, pulled pork, brisket, collard greens, mac and cheese, baby. Come get some and get you a nice, smooth cigar. 304-550-4431. That is 304-550-4431. Come get some, baby. The Rib Man, mama, the Rib Man.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to a good friend of mine.
It's the Dash and Dale Day.
Put your hands together.
Jazz at Miss Connie's house. Ooh, on In Touch Radio.
In In Touch Radio.
This is Joel Sylvain
and Kevin Carr,
and we're with Power Moves, where celebrities, athletes, key influential executives,
influencers
share how they make money, how they attract power, and how they earn respect. Come join us every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Power Moves
on In Touch Radio. You're listening to Tampa Bay Tammy,
your girlfriend,
on In Touch Radio. In Touch Radio.
Oh boy. And we're right here for another edition of Straight Up the Middle. We have with us Mr. Rashaun Gendrett. Let me give you, he comes from Cali, and he's been here less than 2 years in Hillsborough County. And based on his over 20 years experience in all kind of education things, from you name it in the school system to mentor, coach, dean, the whole bit. And so we're going to get into why he's running. Before we left for the break, Clint, you still there? Before we left for the break, we talked about I asked him a question. If you don't like the teaching of CRT, which has never been in schools anyway, it's a theoretical approach to stuff that in the college level, which we have those type of CRT moments all the time. In theories, a lot of people write a dissertation on a theory. Am I right about that, Mr. Gendrett?
That's true.
All right. So, if in that case in mind, in a local school board race, I ask you again to explain if it brings us apart. Wouldn't you think, hiding the fact that we had Klansmen that hung people, that we had government officials that were involved with the Klan, that we had girls bummed? I mean, how do you have the courage to say I'm against CRT at the same time that we don't really teach black history and American history like we should, and then gloss over the fact that black people were victims of heinous crimes, including that church incident? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to lay out what you really meant before I ask you another question.
Before it gets too hot in here, right?
Well, but I mean, when people tell me that, white and black, tell me, what are you saying? It was okay to bum those kids and then say, hey, we can't talk about that?
Yeah, and I think it's important that, and listening to you, Pete, we're talking about two different things.
Okay.
And your definition of CRT is way different than my definition of CRT. Everything that you've mentioned, my mother walked with Martin Luther King in Alabama, Birmingham, back in the day. So I understand about racism and how it affected black people. So that's not what we're talking about. So I think we're talking about two different things, and that's why when I go to talk to different groups, I clarify what I'm talking about.
All right, let's clarify.
CRT, in my mind, is an attempt to basically rewrite history in terms of, we talked about the 1619 Project, in terms of everything is systematic racism, and basically you have black people as the oppressed and whites as the oppressors, and basically teaching that black people, in a sense, are victims and we're oppressed in healthcare, criminal justice system. I go back to what Martin Luther King Jr. said. He said to judge you not by the color of your skin, but the content of your character. I've met great people here in Hillsborough, white, black, different races. I don't look at every situation through a lens of race. If someone who's of Caucasian or white doesn't like me, I don't automatically just go, it's because they're racist. It may be other reasons. So for me, CRT is not teaching about African-American history. We need to teach about African-American history. We need to teach about the lynchings. But this new CRT that's coming out, and why you see it people are so inflamed about it, it's intentionally trying to create racial tension between groups of people, and I'm against that.
But clearly, sir.
Hey, Pete, let me jump in
okay,
real quick.
Go ahead, Clint. All right, go ahead.
One, I think the mere insertion of the idea that there needs to be a battle over how you teach and discuss race in America was intentionally for the purpose of dividing.
Yes.
And the mere fact that it's become a platform for some folks to talk about without even a clear definition.
Yes.
I wasn't aware that there was this alarm at the gate regarding the way that race was being addressed in America. There are certain facts that are undeniable.
Correct.
White people oppressed black people in America. That is a fact. That's not an opinion. It is a fact. It is a fact that they didn't use mechanisms of government to manifest that oppression once the Constitution changed and gave rights. Again, those are facts, that black people in America have been terrorized by white organizations, and that itself is manifest in continued disadvantages in economic opportunity, jobs, and education. Those are facts. So I don't know what the argument against teaching those facts are now. A theory, critical race theory, and the idea of those theories, I'm okay with that. But I don't think that there are certain facts that are facts. That during the World War II, the Nazis tried to exterminate Jewish people in Eastern Europe. That's a fact. It's not an opinion, and I think we fall short when we look at history and want to make it something that is not fact-driven and is subjective. If you look at the statistics of the American ability to participate fully in black Americans in the American experience, it is directly connected to how black people in America have been oppressed. Those things continue to manifest themselves today, and not talking about it, honestly, leaves it as I think something that could really be damaging to America in the long term. And so I don't know that we have to be so alarmed about critical race theory as we need to be. I agree with that. Throw that theory out the window.
All right.
But let's be honest about the discussion in America about race and how it affects both black people and how it affects white people. And I think we can all get a little bit further down the road.
I think so, and that's what I was going to. Local education is one of my expertise as a layperson. So you're running for Hillsborough County, which has changed dramatically. And the question is asked of you at, let's say, this forum with progressive white people who may be or a forum where you got a lot of biracial couples or biracial married couples or whatever the case may be. So a citizen will ask you this question: how do you propose that we take what's on the statute and put it into play where we properly teach black history, the good, bad, and the indifference, and we properly teach that if you're saying all white people aren't bad and what have you, which is fine, so how do you integrate it into the history teaching mechanism that point out that if it wasn't for these white people, we would have been further way behind than we are now? Because obviously, if it wasn't for white people and Jewish people money, the civil rights movement never would have left the page. So that's a question from a progressive standpoint. I'm asking you if you wanted me to vote for you. And then I'm going to ask you a question from the hood point of view.
Okay, well, I think that we need to bring everybody to the table. When we're putting together and we're changing different things, or we're trying to put how to teach things, we need to bring everybody together. And this is and I heard Clint, you mentioned before, and everything you said, Clint, I didn't disagree with, but I think lots of people have a different opinion of what CRT is. And everything that you mentioned, Clint, prior was not CRT. That was American history. But what they're trying to do with this CRT is they're trying to politicize it, and they're trying to use it to turn our kids against each other. And also, I just don't believe it has any place in the school, especially when we have so many issues here in Hillsborough County schools with our failing schools, many of them in minority areas that have not been addressed, have gone unaddressed. Focusing on this is going to take money and resources away from the true needs of our kids in the classroom.
Now, are you saying it shouldn't be taught at any educational level, or should it stay on the collegiate level?
I don't know. I'm thinking specifically about Hillsborough County schools and the area where I would have oversight as a board member. I don't believe it has a place.
So how do you, and I'm asking this from a black person of low income area, I ask you this question. How do you represent me as part of the county-wide system, and yet I hear you say we at the table we've had the statute for 20 years at least on teaching black history. They have very little movement on it. So how do you convince me that you're not a person that says I'm hopeless, just go away, we don't need to talk about black history and the ailments of this country at all? How do you, why should I vote for you if you're tap dancing around that issue?
Yeah, well, like I said,
Me?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, I do believe we need to talk about race. So I want to make that clear. I'm not suggesting that we don't talk about race. I'm not suggesting we don't talk about the lynchings. I was a teacher for over 15, 20 years. I taught history. I taught elementary school. Matter of fact, in high school, I taught government and U.S. history. So we talked about these things. But what's happened now in our schools, politics has now become infected in our schools. And now we have groups on both sides who are trying to input and try to change the narrative of how we teach certain things to fit their own political viewpoint. And I think that's wrong. Our kids should not be used as pawns. Our schools should be places of learning, reading, writing, arithmetic, and not places of indoctrination from either side.
Well, listen, if I'm a kid, and you say, if I'm and especially in high school, and I say this guy, Mr. Gendrett, I like him and all like that, but one reason why I won't vote for him, because he says he's against CRT, and when I do research from across the country, CRT looks like that those extreme, and really CRT opposition is based on white extremism, in my opinion. So it appears to me, if I'm a student in high school, it seems like the CRT is a smokescreen not to talk about history, particularly black history, at all. Now, when you get that question on the campaign trail, how would you answer that and still hope to get, because you're running countywide, so obviously you know that historically conservatives vote different in education. If you look at the numbers in Hillsborough County, how you going to, you trying to straddle a fence, or how you going to deal with that, my brother?
Well, I mean, I just talk to people one-on-one. Like, we're having this conversation when I talk to voters. And because it's interesting is, and I think this is a big issue, is we have to understand what CRT is and what CRT is not. And I think when we talk to a lot of people, even this conversation we're having today, it shows me that more education needs to be done on this topic, because CRT to me is not teaching about racism. It is not teaching about slavery. That is not the issue. The issue is how we're doing it and what political point of view are we trying to push as we teach it. That's
surely, taking the other side of it, if I was for CRT, you would have to give me the same respect as the reason why I think it should be taught. Am
Absolutely.
I right about that?
I'm willing to have a conversation with anybody.
And then that brings me up to this.
Yeah,
that.
You know, so if I could jump back in, real quick
before we go to break.
You know, and how much time do I have before we go to break?
Well, we got about a minute or less, so go ahead. You know, lawyers can be prolonged.
I'm going to let you guys, Pete. I think you got him by both ankles right now. So I don't think you need me, bending an arm. I guess the and I don't want to. I really think about this, and it is. I think I'm watching my children go through the education system. I went through it, and a horrible job was done at fully educating them on all the dynamics of America that they need to be ready to deal with as they go through their lives. Race is a core part of that, and I think we do a disservice if we pretend like it is not. This critical race theory issue, it's not organic. This is a strategy designed to distract from the real issues that really, really affect our community.
I agree.
We probably shouldn't be putting this much time of discussion in it today.
But since he's running for education, I mean, since he's running
it doesn't need to be addressed, because that is a place we've decided to teach about health, sex education. We've added so many other education components. I think we must teach about race in our school system. Now, he mentioned the 1619 Project. I've been trying to get it. I can't get my hands on a copy. Does either one of you guys have a copy of it?
I'm going to look in my book stack. I think I have one, Clint, that I printed out of the New York Times.
Let me say this, though. I can't get a copy, and every time I challenge somebody, they don't have a copy either, which says to me, most people haven't actually read it. What they've read is the commentary about it. And that's a problem also.
Well, the New York Times did a series on it.
Yeah.
That's how I read it.
They did a series on it. Right. But if you didn't follow that series, you missed it. And now all we have is commentary about it. Because I've been trying to get a copy of it. It's supposed to be available in November sometime.
All right, we're gonna try to find you one. And when we come from the break, and we're gonna ask them the question. He talks about failing schools and all. Okay, sir.
All right, I'm going to drop off Pete and let you guys have it. I'll be listening, okay? Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it very much.
When we come from the break, I want you to tell our listening audience in Tampa, you talk about failing schools. It's nothing new. How are you going to get people who kids that don't live in those, that go to those failing schools, like in Plant City area, or white people who are conservative want more charter schools and that kind of stuff, or parochial schools. How you going to get them involved to deal with the failing schools? Because they play a part too.
All right.
And then I want you to ask the question, is the failing schools on the school board's fault, or is it the parents? And we'll be right back on an interesting morning, overcast morning on Straight Up the Middle. My God, I'm hungry, Daryl. Where's those ribs at? All right, 813-444-9588. This is Pete Everett sitting in for my boy Clint as he uses all of his mulligans out there on the golf course somewhere. And to the ladies, too, hello. I haven't forgotten y'all. Y'all hard on me, but I love you. All right, we'll be right back.
In Touch Radio is smooth soul.
Rocking your radio on the sounds of soul.
Playing your favorite R&B. In Touch Radio.
Call Ricky. Ask Ricky. You need medical or a lawyer? I got the man to do the legwork for you. We tried the other ones before, so believe we hunted down 813-248-6300. Everything gon' be okay. Call Ricky, he coming. He taking care of state of Florida. Grab a pen or sundown. 184-361-RICK. That's 184-361-425. Never word from the point forward, just recline. Just ask Ricky, plus your boy statewide. Just in case you missed it, I'ma tell you one more time. 184-361-RICK. Call Ricky, ask Ricky. It's a legal medical referral service. The doctors and lawyers in our network are trained in handling auto injury claims and giving you the best medical treatment and recovery. Dial 1-844-361-RICK. That's 1-844-361-7425. Ricky. Ask Ricky.
Ribidici. Oh, on a beautiful overcast. Check your driveways out. Be careful. A lot of potholes in the street. Tampa yesterday got 3 inches of rain. Sarasota 4 inches. All over the country. Climate changed a whole bit. But we're here with my good friend Rashaun Gendrett from. He's a transplant from California. Over 20 years in LA Independent School District. He's here now. He's running for a countywide seat on the Hillsborough County School System. We've been talking with him on a lot of issues, but let's get this phone call. Caller, come in right quick, and you can, as long as you keep it clean, you can ask Mr. Gendrett any tough question you want. Go ahead, caller.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
This is Antoinette Davis. I was listening in to the discussion that you guys were having about whether or not we should be teaching about this racism issue in school. I have, 5 kids that are in the school system. I'm not sure where I am on whether or not I want to allow their teachers and others to kind of navigate that conversation. But I do a lot of work in the community to try to bring people together so that we can deal with racism. I think the history and the disparities that still exist in our county is definitely something that we have to spend time talking about. I'm actually a part of a group that got the Board of County Commission to pass a resolution declaring that racism is a public health crisis. And so we're, having forums, inviting people out to our forum that's happening on November the 15th so that we can deal with some of those disparities that's in that resolution and not only just keep talking about it, but try to find solutions on how we might address some of the pay gap and the unemployment rates and the fact that African Americans in Hillsborough County are not owning homes at the rate that others are. So I just want to kind of put that out there as an opportunity. If others want to join us on Zoom, they can go to Bible-base.org/envision, envision, ENVISION, Bible-base.org/envision.
All right, let me ask you something. You will have an educational component with regards to that discussion?
We're actually doing this as a series, and so the first part of our discussion is based on equity, seeing equity in employment opportunities, and equity across the board, as well as community engagement. So others are doing things to address racism in their community, and we're looking and calling on our public officials to invest in those opportunities so we can move the ball forward.
And the reason why I ask you that, the reason why I ask you for that is because when you're talking about equity and the whole bit, you have to educate your community. And what I'm finding among young people, particularly 25 and under, those who are, let's say, blue-collar or skilled workers but non-degree citizens, 25 and under, they have not been common sense educated wise as to how racism affects them with some issues and all, because within our community, or whether people like for me to say it or not, there's a schism or division in there where you have a high level degreed African American person that kind of shuns really working with blue collar and low income people. So I'm thinking education wise, that's part of the teaching process. Hey, what are we talking about real equity? What are we talking about employment discrimination? Because when I look at a lot of jobs that are open, a lot of kids aren't applying for the jobs. They keep waiting till they up the wage scale and all like that. So that's why I put that in there for you. And I strongly suggest that as y'all work through this series, you do talk about the education piece, in which he's going to talk about why he think we have failing schools. So he's got a website. You got a website where they can invite you?
Absolutely.
Tell us what that is.
It is Gendrett for School Board, GENDRETT.
So we're doing this work through the Bible-Based Justice Ministry. So it's the church's website, Bible.
Okay, here goes there.
Okay.
That's Temple Terrace or Carrollwood?
That's the one in Carrollwood.
Okay, all right. Pastor Tony over there.
Our series, I just wanted to say, our series is involving health and mental health. There are components we know with children's living conditions that are contributing to some of the health and mental health issues that they're having, that sometimes plays itself out through behavior in schools. So that definitely is an area that I think is related.
All right, so we will.
And our final piece is criminal justice.
All right, so we want people to do that, and we'll let Mr. Gendrett. I got a tough more questions to ask him, and I think I'll try to get to that too. Thank
Antoinette,
you for calling.
I think that was her information was really important.
All right.
One of the things that when I worked for Early Unified, I was a homeless and foster youth liaison.
Okay.
And so understanding how homelessness and foster youth and understanding those issues and the issues that those students face when they come to school and how it affects academics is extremely important. So I think mental health is extremely important.
All right, let's get into something, Mr. Gendrett.
All right, let's get into it.
You're running county-wide in a county that tilts a little bit Democratic, but it's not necessarily all progressive. Okay, we got another call because I want to really ask you this question. Come in, caller. I want to ask you this question after this caller. Caller, what say you? Hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Good morning. My name is Sheila Simmons-Tribble, and I just want to add to what the previous caller said about the community forum and vision.
Well, ma'am, we're going to have a show on that, and we appreciate you getting the information out for that. And I urge people to go to the Bible-Based Fellowship website to get into that. And that's why I asked Ms. Davis about putting in the education component. And I know Clint is working on the show to talk about that equity and the racism and all. So I assure you we're going to get that lined up and talk about it more. But I don't, with the limited time I have left, there's a couple of critical questions I need to ask him because he is running.
Okay.
And so I want you to listen to that part of it, and then maybe you can tie it in.
Certainly.
Okay? Because one thing Ms. Davis said, she talked about the mental health of the kids. But what was not said, and a lot of groups that having all these forums are running away from, is the effects of education on a child's mental health. Not because they're in foster care, but how about the ones in a regular home? That's why I mentioned that y'all should put that comparison.
I totally agree.
Okay, all right, let's have him get us. Thank you for calling
Thank you very much.
All right, sir.
Okay,
all right,
bye-bye.
They're trying to take you off the hook, but I'm not going to let that happen. You tell me, where does the fault lie? You running county-wide, and let's look at Hillsborough County. We know that the growth of Hillsborough County schools is in the Riverview area and down south, almost to the county line. We know in Plant City and those areas, Turkey Creek, and those areas in East County, they have a different mindset about schools. It's a little bit more conservative. You know, the people in South Tampa, any kind of hook or crook way they can get their kids into the schools like Wilson and Plant, they're going to do it. Lie, steal, cheat, whatever. I know that. Now, you tell me, you running countywide, how are you going to tie in your run countywide with failing schools in one particular district of the county more than others? Whose fault is it? And what's your proposal that can stick and be meaningful and be sincerely?
Wow, that's a good question. I get that question all the time, and one of the things that I talk about is that we've done for so long, especially in our minority schools, is we usually just throw money at the problem. And I've seen it over my 20 years of education is that we throw money at it. Let me give you what I'm talking about. So a school's failing in a minority community, the parents are in uproar. They give $200,000. We have a big check and we take a nice picture in front of the school and it looks good. And then in 2 years, the money runs out and the school is back in the same ditch it was in before. And then guess what happens in another 2 years? Wash, rinse, and repeat. So what I want to do when I'm elected to the school board is to come up with long-term solutions for our failing schools instead of just throwing money at the schools and then they're back in the same position they were in before. Because that's part of the huge problem that we're having, not just in Hillsborough, but nationwide, especially in the minority communities, is that simply we're not addressing long-term issues. We're addressing just short-term issues. So I really want to come up with, and this probably will entail having to lobby Tallahassee for additional money for our schools and for our students, especially in our minority communities who need additional resources.
Stop right there. Stop right there. I mean, are you telling me, first of all, let's go with the second part, get money from Tallahassee. You know as well as I do, Tallahassee leans to more charter schools and parochial schools. In fact, the Supreme Court soon will be making a ruling on how much tax money can go to parochial schools, church schools, Catholic schools, or whatever. So you should know the climate in Florida right now. They're not going to give, when you look at per pupil spending and all, they're not going to give that, particularly the urban school district. Some urban school districts, they're going back to an elected superintendent versus an appointed. So I'm going to put a pin in that to give you a chance to work on your campaign before you run into that question from me or somebody else again. Number one, you talked about funding. Now, you said in your background you worked in Title I program.
My entire career.
All right, so are you telling me the funding that comes with Title I was either inappropriate or it just wasn't worth it?
Yeah, I'm not saying it was ineffective. I worked at Title I schools, and so I was able to see these issues up front. Is oftentimes they will give additional money to minority schools, but what happens is the money is not sustainable. And so we'll have, for example, they'll give us money to have a school psychologist, a school counselor, and the money will only last for 2 years. But guess what? In those 2 years after the money is up, the population has grown, we've had an increase in students, and now we don't have the money. And so that's unfair to our minority schools to do that to them, to throw money at them for a short period of time and then allow them to fail again. I think that's wrong, and when I'm elected to the school board, that is one of the main things that I will want to address first off when I'm elected, is coming up with long-term solutions, long-term funding issues, which includes Tallahassee, which I'm going to disagree with you to a certain extent.
Okay.
I believe that I'm able to work with anybody, Democrat, Republican, Independent. I'm able to work with anybody. I'm able to work with all people on all sides of the table to try to get things done for our kids in Hillsborough County.
All right, now you kind of misled. When we come back from the break, I think you misled people a little bit, assuming that Title I funding is only 2 years. In the schools,
it is not.
Okay, so I want to clear that up.
It is not.
I'm gonna help you out, bro.
Yes, it's not.
Clean that up a little bit.
But what I'm saying is sometimes the funding varies from year to year.
When we come back, I'm gonna ask you, what's fault is the parents? Because I believe in parents should start education at home. So we're here with my good friend Rashaun Gendrett running for school. I'm happy the brother running for school boards countywide, but I got to help him get ready for all the eggs coming his way. So we'll be right back with Straight Up the Middle. Where's my ribs? My goodness. But anyway, Mr. Gendrett, tough question. You're handling it all right, but we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
All right.
By now, we're all aware of the dangers of COVID-19. Like others with existing health issues, cancer patients are at a high risk due to their compromised condition. If you are newly diagnosed with cancer, your care likely can't wait. Moffitt Cancer Center is the best place for your cancer concerns and to provide guidance to help you plan your next steps. We're here for you. Call 1-888-456-2839 or go to moffitt.org/here-for-you.
You've been injured. You deserve help from an attorney that knows how to handle your injury claim. This is attorney Clinton Parrish from the law office of Clinton Parrish. For over a decade, I worked for insurance companies, and now I use that knowledge and experience to help people that have been injured. For a free consultation, call me, attorney Clinton Parrish, at 813-413-7924. That's 813-413-7924, or at ParrishLawOffice.com. At the Law Office of Clinton Parrish, we take the pain out of being hurt. Offices, Riverview.
All right. I'm feeling so good. I mean, I'm so fired up. Got a brother that's running for county school board district-wide in Hillsborough County. I can't believe it. You're the, be quite honest with you, you're the, we have a habit here in Hillsborough County. I want you to know that there's a habit. Now, women not going to like me when I say it, but there's a habit of not electing, even from within the black community, a lot of the voters, particularly the women voters, because they outvote the men, they have an issue with voting for black men countywide for anything. I mean, I was putting it, this fact speaks for themselves. But before we go, I want to ask you this tough question, because I believe education starts at home. And kids come into school failing. That's a parental fault. What is your opinion on where the fault really lies? Does it start at home, or is it all on the school system?
I think everybody's got to take some responsibility. I think that growing up for me, my mother was my first teacher, because actually my mother was a teacher.
Okay.
She was a second grade teacher for many years. And actually I was in her class in second grade, back when you could do that. I was in her class in a private school. So I think everybody bears responsibility for it. I think parents have a role, the schools have a role.
Well, what are the parents' role? You know, most school districts now are going K through 8 or pre-K through 8. That's the new building concept a whole bit. So when you're out on the trail, or just as a concerned citizen like I am, that like education issues and projects and controversies, the parent role, what we know in these failing schools, they're predominantly black and Hispanic. A lot of parents don't have even a high school degree. The grandparents are trying to carry the load. When you say it's a parent's, well, when does the parent role starts and stops?
Well, I'll tell you, a parent's role never stops.
Well, some people think it does.
I think that a parent is always a parent. A parent is in charge from, it doesn't stop when they come to the school building. So I think a parent's roles and responsibility never ends. And I think we need to do a better job of engaging our parents and providing additional resources, because I know many of our parents work. Some of them work 2 jobs, especially in this COVID climate, and many people are struggling. So I think we need to do a better job as a school district of reaching out into our black and brown communities and providing resources and help and resources, because I really am committed. I don't know, and this is not politician talk. This is real talk. This comes from my real life experience of over 20 years working in underrepresented communities. Something's got to change, and we've got to do something about it. And I'm really passionate and serious about making change on the school board.
Sound like you're trying to straddle the fence again, because I asked you the question, when should the parent be held accountable? See, from birth, my opinion, from birth, you start teaching. For an example, the Hillsborough County school system has this My Young Reader program. When I was on the children's board, we gave them the first $100,000 to go with that. Babies as young as 18 months or whatever can start learning that. A lot of parents got all kind of social media things at home and all. They even, you see them in the library, a lot of young parents, when they're in the library, the first thing they look up is who's got a warrant, who's in jail, and all that other kind of foolishness. But they can be teaching their children also. So I'm going to ask you again. Now, you may be avoiding the question because you don't want to put the parents out there. At what point should the parents be held accountable? My position is time the baby is born, then you start educating. It may not be all the fancy words, because I don't like a lot of fancy fake words in the high English category anyway. But if you can educate the kid, you can teach him skills, how to hold his hands and how to learn how to fix stuff with play tools and all. So I'm going to ask you again, at what point should the parent be held accountable to get this child ready for school?
Well, like I said, I think it takes a village to raise a child. I think that it's not, and it's just, I think that it's not just a one-size-fits-all, that we blame the parents, we blame the schools. I think we all need to come together as a community and help solve these issues together, because I don't think blaming does any good. I think blaming is not helping us get any solutions. So by us coming together, we can come together to get some solutions.
Let me ask you for the third time, at what point does a parent of a child has the responsibility to start educating the child?
Well, of course. I mean, they need to start that at birth. My mother was my first teacher.
Okay.
My mother my mother was a Sunday school teacher, and every Saturday night before church for Sunday, she would go over my Sunday school lesson with me. We go over it. We pray together. So a parent has a huge responsibility. But I think in terms as it relates to the schools, we all need to be at the table together, working together to find real solutions.
I tell you what, I got to give you credit. It's not because she's from Cali, because a lot of people move into Florida from other parts of the country that may be more liberal and everything, and then they think the brothers and sisters, we just got a bag over our head that we can't even think for ourselves and all. So I give you credit that you're doing a little bit of your homework. But I got to tell you something, with your educational points of view, you do and we got to have you back, because you hit on some good points. But as one who ran for office before myself and helped others get elected, you do a delicate straddling of the fence in some ways. That's understandable. Nothing personal. That's just what politicians and people trying to get elected for office do, whether it's they're liberal or extremely right. But when you talk about education, you say failing schools and at the table. In this county, we've been at the table for a long time.
Right.
So to me, we got to do something different. Now, before I let you go, because I got a text, are you in favor of more funding, public funding for charter schools?
I'm for funding for all of our schools. I think it was interesting is people oftentimes ask me that question. I am for good quality schools in Hillsborough County, wherever they are, whether it's a traditional school, whether it's a charter school. I just want all of our students in our community to have a quality school where they can succeed and do well.
All right, Mr. Gendrett, one other question, and then I'm through with you for right now.
For right now. All right.
All right. Charter schools have different criteria for measuring success than regular public schools. Do you think that's right?
I think we do need to level the playing field, and I've had some discussions with people on the campaign trail, and even some of my own thoughts, because I've had experience with charter schools. I worked at all traditional schools my entire career, so I think that we do need to discuss and look at leveling the playing field for charter schools.
Now, level them to where it's to their advantage now, where they don't have to be held accountable like public schools, or do you rein them in because they're using your money?
I think all the schools need to be accountable. They're getting public funds, state funds. They all need to be accountable.
Oh, man, we would have had a good barbecue sandwich with this discussion today. So as we get ready to close, please be careful out there. There's a lot of wet streets. Remind people you don't stop school buses. You just don't do that, okay? And I'm seeing it more and more. And when you got kids in the car, leave your reefer at home. Why would you smoke reefer taking your kids to school and then you roll down the window and everybody can smell it? That's not right. It's a bad example. And I'm talking about serious education, because when you're teaching your kids and they say it's all right to be high as a kite at 7:30 in the morning, take them to school and let everybody know that you're smoking your herb with the kids in the car. You kill somebody, then what are the kids going to have as a parent? You don't believe me? Look what happened to Henry Ruggs up in Las Vegas. So we enjoyed you. Don't forget to go to the Bible-based website for that. I hope they put the education component in it.
Could also,
go ahead.
Gendrett for School Board, GENDRETT, the number 4, schoolboard.com. Gendrett, the number 4, schoolboard.com.
Number 4, and you running district what?
District-wide.
District-wide, and you're going to see him. I'm sure he's going to have an op-ed piece or advertising piece in the In Touch newspaper. I'll be looking for that. Because if you don't, then I'll call you out and want to make sure that you just did not use us for a platform for 1 minute. I'm a hood brother like that, okay? So I keep it real. All right. Well, boy, what did I get myself into this morning? But it's all love, okay? Daryl, give me a call after and let me know how you thought I did, or do I need to pick up my last check? Once again, another edition of In Touch Reality News. We'll see you next week, everybody. Enjoy the weekend. First Sunday, when you pray, you just don't pray for yourself, but you pray for others who are less fortunate than you. You know why? Because they saw something in you even while they were less fortunate and prayed that you have a better chance in life than them. So remember, you didn't get to be where you were by yourself. You're standing on a whole lot of shoulders, all right? We'll see you again next week, and with Clinton, maybe the PhD man will be back. And he's wearing an American flag on his suit, so you know he's a conservative Republican, right? A conservative politician. Goodbye, everybody.